Amazing news story about how there is a bank out of Russia secretly communicating with a Trump server. So let me give you the details. This is from CNN. Federal investigators and computer scientists continue to examine whether there was a computer server connection between the Trump organization and a Russian bank. Sources close to the investigation tell CNN. Now, as you will see in the story, yes, there was a connection. The question is, what is inside that connection? That we don't know as well, but there are a lot that we do know, and it's not just the Russians communicating with that server. I think the second biggest group is also very interesting. That we'll get to at the end. The FBI's investigation remains open, the sources said, and is in the hands of the FBI's counterintelligence team, the same one looking into Russia's suspected interference in the 2016 election. So high drama here. That this is not random speculation. The FBI is actually investigating this. Internet data shows that last summer, a computer server owned by Russia-based Alfa Bank repeatedly looked up the contact information from a computer server being used by the Trump organization, far more than other companies did, representing 80% of all the lookups to the Trump server. Now that is very curious. There's a Trump server somewhere in the country, I'll tell you where in a sec, and this Alfa Bank from Russia keeps communicating with it. Okay. The issue intrigued a dozen computer researchers at a recent business conference in Washington, D.C. that pulled together the world's top network operators, the ones who help run the internet. To them, it's a strange coincidence that merits further scrutiny. Now, let me clarify something that's very important. As you're about to see, really unclear what's going on between the servers. So if you say you don't know what's in the content there, you're right. If you say it is an open question as to whether this is a coincidence, that is not true. It's not an open question. There is not a world in which a probability exists that a Russian bank just happens to be communicating with a Trump server totally coincidentally and is 80% of the traffic going to that server. That is not a thing that can happen randomly. So maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's not Alfa Bank, it's Beta Bank. Maybe it's not a Russian bank, it's a German bank. But if it's correct, it is not a coincidence. No one in their right mind could think that it's a coincidence. All right, and as you'll see again, the second largest communications also shows it's not a coincidence. So last year, a small group of computer scientists obtained internet traffic records from the complex system that serves as the internet's phone book. Access to these records is reserved for highly trusted cybersecurity firms and companies that provide this lookup service. These leaked records show that Alfa Bank servers repeatedly looked up the unique internet address of a particular Trump organization computer server in the United States. In the computer world, it's the equivalent of looking up someone's phone number over and over again. While there isn't necessarily a phone call, it usually indicates an intention to communicate, according to several computer scientists. Now look, that's the thing. We can't tell if they actually did communicate. We can't tell what that communication substance was or content was. But there is, again, not a probability that exists where randomly a Russian bank, in the midst of stories about how Russia is helping Donald Trump in an election, winds up communicating with a Trump server nearly 3,000 times. That is not a probability that exists. Of course it's not a coincidence. Should they investigate further to see what in the world they were doing? Of course they should. This is a giant story. Publicly available internet records show that address, which was registered to the Trump organization, points to an IP address that lives on an otherwise dull machine operated by a company in the tiny rural town of Lititz, Pennsylvania. One last time. Trump's organization has a random server in the middle of a tiny little town in Pennsylvania. And of all the communication it gets, 80% of it is from a Russian bank. In the midst of an election where we've now concluded, all of our intelligence has concluded, the Russians meddled in our elections. Now, To what degree they meddled, what they mean by meddling, there's huge debates over. I understand that. But were the Russians in some way motivated to help Donald Trump? Come on, you know that that's obviously true. And you know why? They have a $500 billion deal that got blocked by Obama's sanctions that Hillary Clinton was going to continue. And they have a fairly good sense that Donald Trump is not going to continue those sanctions. One of the ways they know that is he put the CEO of ExxonMobil as his Secretary of State. The deal was with ExxonMobil. Okay, so they have all the intention, they have all the motive in the world to deal with Trump, and all of a sudden that bank keeps communicating with a Trump server in the middle of Pennsylvania. Now, the last straw was, hey, there's another entity that's communicating with the Trump server. And combined, these two are 99% of the communication to this one server. Now, so if that second entity turns out to be random, then I would go, okay, wait. Now maybe there was some coincidence here in some way. Let's find out, right? So far back in second place, they explained, with 714 such lookups, was a company called Spectrum Health. Oh, well, I hadn't heard of Spectrum Health, so I thought maybe that is random, right? That would change the tone of the story completely. Let's find out if it is. Spectrum is a medical facility chain led by Dick DeVos, the husband of Betsy DeVos, who was appointed by Trump as US Education Secretary. Now let me get this right. There's a server in the middle of Pennsylvania that Trump runs. 80% of the communication comes from a Russian bank, and almost the rest of it comes from the largest Republican donor there's been for decades. The DeVos family has been giving to the Republicans tens of millions of dollars. They might have exceeded over $100 million they've given the Republican Party. And then all of a sudden, Dick DeVos's wife becomes the education secretary after the server keeps getting communication from Dick DeVos's company. Another giant coincidence. Ain't no coincidence like this. Together, Alfa and Spectrum accounted for 99% of the lookups. For God's sake, find out what was in those lookups. What happened there? Why were those things communicating? What did they communicate if they communicated? Was it financial? Was it just messages back and forth? But there, right there, is a treasure chest. That might tell you exactly what happened between Trump and the Russians, let alone Trump and DeVos and whoever else wanted to help Trump for their own purposes. You know who created journalism you could be proud of? You did. Our audience helped us hire an investigative reporting team. Now we're going to go for a second. tytnetwork.com/go. Let's build the best reporting team in the country together.